Hello students, today we are going to discuss NCERT exemplar of chapter Dual Nature of Radiation and Matter. This is the disclaimer. So let's start by looking at what you will be able to do after this lecture. Okay, so you will be able to understand and apply the concepts of dual nature of matter and radiation. This includes the de Broglie wavelength, which tells us the particles like electrons have a wavelength. We will also cover the photoelectric effect, where light knocks electrons out of a metal, showing light acts like particle called photons. And also notice how wave particle duality means sometimes thing behaves like waves and other times like particles depending on how we observe them. Next, you will be able to solve numerical problems using these ideas. For example, you will calculate photon energy using E is equal to h nu. You will also find electron wavelengths and see how changing a particle's momentum changes its wavelength. Now let's focus on what we will cover today. There are total 29 NCERT example questions in chapter Dual Nature of Radiation and Matter. In this lecture, we are going to cover questions 11.1 to 11.10. Now let's examine first NCERT example question 11.1, and the question says a particle is dropped from height h. The de Broglie wavelength of the particle as a function of height is proportional to. Options are h, h raised to power half means root h, C option h raised to power 0, and D option h raised to power minus half. That means 1 upon root h. So let's see which option is correct. So D option is correct, h raised to power minus half, that is 1 upon root h. So let's see a solution. First, recall the formula for de Broglie wavelength. The de Broglie wavelength written as lambda equal to h upon m times v. Okay, here h is Planck's constant, m is the mass of particle, and v is its velocity. Okay, let's think about how fast the particle is moving as it falls. When a particle is dropped from a height h, it accelerates due to gravity. The velocity it gains just before reaching the ground can be found using equations of motion for free fall. So the velocity v of particle just before it hits the ground is given by v square root of 2g times h. Okay, here g is the acceleration due to gravity and h is the height. Therefore, de Broglie wavelength given is, so putting it all together, the de Broglie wavelength lambda is equal to h divided by m times the square root of 2gh. This means lambda is proportional to 1 divided by the square root of h, or h to the power minus half. Okay, so let's see the formula for the de Broglie wavelength in this situation. That is lambda equal to h upon m root 2g multiplied by root h. Here lambda is the de Broglie wavelength in meters and h is the Planck's constant in joule seconds. M is the mass of the particle in kilograms and g is the acceleration due to gravity in meter per second square. Okay, so let's simplify the expression. The term h divided by m root 2g is a constant, say k. Okay, because g is constant, h is Planck's constant, m mass of the particle is also constant. So we can write lambda is equal to k divided by square root of h, or we can say lambda is proportional to 1 over square root of h because k is constant. Okay, so finally we can express this proportionality as lambda is proportional to h to the power of minus half. So 1 upon root h can be written as h raised to power minus half. Okay, so this summarizes our result. The de Broglie wavelength gets smaller as the particle falls from a greater height. following an inverse square root relationship. So now let's examine NCERT example 11.2, which says the wavelength of a photon needed to remove a proton from a nucleus which is bound to the nucleus with 1 mega electron volt energy is nearly. So what is the photon of what wavelength needed to remove that proton? So to remove that proton from the nucleus which is bound with the energy 1 mega electron volt, so 1 mega electron volt energy is required to remove that proton. So photon, so wavelength, which wavelength corresponding to that photon will be needed to remove that proton? So options given are 1.2 nanometer, B option 1.2 into 10 to the power minus 3 nanometer, C option 1.2 multiplied by 10 to the power minus 6 nanometer, and D option is 1.2 multiplied by 10 nanometer. So correct option is 1.2 multiplied by 10 to the power minus 3 nanometer. So let's recall the formula for the energy of a photon, that is E equal to h nu, or we can write it as EC upon lambda, where lambda is the wavelength of the photon, E is the energy of photon in joules, h is the Planck's constant, and C is the speed of the light. So let's substitute the given values. The energy needed is 1 mega electron volt, which stands for 1 million electron volt. To use this in our formula, we will need to convert it into joules. Okay, so remember 1 electron volt is 1.6 times 10 raised to power minus 19 joules. So 1 mega electron volt is 1 times 10 raised to power 6 electron volts. Okay, so let's recall a useful constant h times c. So this is having value in electron volt nanometer. Okay, or Planck's constant multiplied by the speed of light, it's approximately 1240 electron volt nanometers. This is a standard value for h multiplied by c because both are constant, Planck's constant and speed of light. So their multiplication is constant in the term of electron volt nanometer. Okay, so let's write the key formula h equal to E equal to hc divided by lambda, where E is the energy of the photon. So here we don't want to, we have calculated the value of hc in electron volt nanometer, so we will not convert the energy into joules. Okay, we will keep it in the electron volts. Okay, so where E is the energy of the photon and h is the Planck's constant, c is the speed of light, and lambda is the wavelength. So let's rearrange the formula to solve the wavelength. Lambda equal to hc divided by E, plugging in the terms, we get lambda equals to 1240 electron volt nanometers divided by 1 million electron volt, that is 10 to the power 6 electron volt. Okay, so finally we conclude the answer lambda equals to 1.24 times 10 to the power minus 3 nanometers. That is the wavelength of photon needed to remove the proton from the nucleus. So now let's examine NCERT example 11.3. Okay, the question says consider a beam of electron. Okay, a beam of electron means a number of electrons moving in a straight line. Okay, with some speed. A beam of electron, each electron with energy E naught, incident on a metal surface, kept in an evacuated chamber. Evacuated chamber means vacuum is created in that chamber. Okay, then what are the options? No electron will be emitted as only photons can emit electrons. So which option is correct? You have to write. So B option, electrons can be emitted but all with an energy E naught. C option, electron can be emitted with any energy with a maximum of E naught minus phi, where phi is the work function. And D option is electrons can be emitted with any energy with a maximum of E naught. So let's see which option is correct. So D option is correct. Electrons can be emitted with any energy with a maximum of E naught. So let's examine what happens when electrons with energy E naught hit a metal surface. The maximum energy that any emitted electron can have is E naught. But in reality, electrons can be emitted with any energy less than or equal to E naught. This is because some energy can be lost in the process, for example, due to interaction with the metal. Okay, so let's consider option A from the question. No electrons will be emitted as only photons can emit electrons. So this statement is incorrect. Why this is incorrect? So let's see. So this is incorrect because when an incoming electron collides with the metal, it can transfer enough energy to knock out another electron. So it's not only photons that can cause electron emission, electron can do it also. Okay, so this means that the idea that only photons can emit electrons is a misconception. Both photons and electrons can provide the necessary energy to release the electrons from a metal surface depending on the situation. So let's start by considering option B, which says the electron can be emitted but all with an energy E naught. Okay, so notice that this statement is actually incorrect. Not all emitted electrons will have the same energy E naught. In real situations, some electrons lose energy through interactions with the metal, so their energy can vary. Some of the incident electrons use part of their energy to overcome the metal's work function, which is the minimum energy needed to remove an electron from the metal surface. Others may lose energy in inelastic collisions with the metal. This means the emitted electron will have a range of energies, not just fixed E naught. Okay, now let's look at option C, which says electrons can be emitted with any energy up to a maximum of E naught minus phi, where phi is the work function. This option is trying to connect the process of photoelectric effect where light knocks electron out of the metal. But this is also incorrect. In this case, the maximum energy of emitted electron can actually be E naught, especially if the collision is elastic and the incident electron transfer all its energy to the emitted electron. The work function doesn't limit the energy in the same way as in the photoelectric effect. Remember, the work function phi is specifically important for photoelectric effect or photoelectric emission where photons are involved. Here, since we are dealing with electrons hitting the metal, the process is different. So now let's examine NCERT example 11.4. The question says, consider figure given below. Suppose the voltage applied to A is increased. Okay, so voltage applied to the electron gun, into the mouth of electron gun from where electron beam is ejected. So voltage applied to A is increased. The diffracted beam, okay, you can see in the diagram. So the diffracted beam will have the maximum at a value of theta. That options are given will be larger than the earlier value. Okay, so maximum at a value of theta, and that maximum value of theta at that instant will be larger than the earlier value, will be same as the earlier value, will be less than the earlier value, will depend on the target. Okay, we have increased the voltage applied to A. Okay, so what is the maximum value of theta? Okay, the diffracted beam will have the maximum at a value of theta that will be larger than the earlier value of theta, the earlier maximum value of theta, or will be same as the earlier maximum value of theta, or will be less than the earlier maximum value of theta, or will depend on the target. So let's look at a question based on Davison-Germer experiment. Okay, so this is the question based on Davison Germer experiment, which is classical experiment that demonstrated the wave nature of electrons. Okay, correct option is C. The maximum at a value of theta will be less than the earlier value. Okay, so the figure gives here show the Davison-Germer experiment, which was held to verify the wave nature of electron. This experiment was designed to show that electrons, which we usually think as of particles, can also behave like waves. So let's focus on the de Broglie wavelength. According to de Broglie, every moving particle like an electron has a wavelength associated with it. This wavelength depends on the particle's momentum, and for electrons accelerated by a voltage, we can calculate it using a specific formula. The formula for the de Broglie wavelength of an electron is lambda equal to 12.27 divided by square root of V, that is voltage, where lambda is in angstroms and V is accelerating voltage in volts, where V is the applied voltage. Okay, now you can see the relation between the applied voltage and wavelength. So let's focus on the condition for getting a maximum in the diffracted electrons. If we see a bright spot or maxima at a certain angle theta, it means the electrons are interfering constructively at that angle. The formula for constructive interference here is 2d sine theta equal to lambda. In this question, d is the spacing between the atomic layers in the crystal. Theta is the angle where we see the maximum, and lambda is the wavelength of the electrons. Now connect the electron wavelength to the voltage. The formula lambda equal to 12.27 divided by square root of V angstrom tells us that if we increase the voltage V, the wavelength lambda gets smaller because they are inversely proportional. Lambda is inversely proportional to root of voltage applied. So if voltage applied will increase, so lambda will get smaller. So higher voltage means electron have more energy and a shorter wavelength. So now let's focus on the key equation for diffraction. 2d sine theta equal to lambda. Here d is the spacing between the crystal planes, theta is the angle of diffraction, and lambda is the wavelength of the electrons. Notice that as lambda increases, sine theta must also increase to keep the equation balanced. Okay, because 2d sine theta equal to lambda. If lambda will decrease or increase, sine theta will also increase or decrease accordingly. Okay, because it is directly proportional to the lambda. Okay, so sine theta, hence theta, because theta is a small angle, so theta and lambda are directly related. So if wavelength lambda decreases, the sine theta must also decrease, which means theta itself gets smaller. This is a direct relationship. Smaller wavelength leads to smaller diffraction angle. Okay, so let's connect this to the voltage. If we increase the voltage applied to A, the electron gain more energy, which means their speed increases. Since the de Broglie wavelength lambda equal to h upon p and momentum p increases with speed, lambda decreases as voltage goes up. We have discussed. So putting it all together, when the voltage is increased, the electron have a smaller wavelength and maximum in the diffraction pattern shifts to the smaller angle theta. That means the bright spot move closer to the center. Okay, so maximum of value theta will be having less value than the earlier value. Now let's examine NCERT example 11.5. The question says a proton, a neutron, and electron and an alpha particle have same energy. Okay, then their de Broglie wavelengths compared as. Okay, they have same energy. Which type of energy? They have same kinetic energy. Okay, so we have to modify the formula for de Broglie wavelength in the terms of energy. Options are given. So their wavelength of proton and neutron is same, which is greater than the wavelength of electron and greater than the wavelength of alpha particle. B option, wavelength of alpha particle is less than wavelength of proton, which is equal to wavelength of neutron and greater than the wavelength of electron. Wavelength of electron is less than the wavelength of proton, which is equal to wavelength of neutron, and wavelength of proton and neutron is greater than the wavelength of alpha particle. D option is wavelength of electron, proton, neutron and alpha particle is same. So let's see which option is correct. So B option, wavelength of alpha particle is less than the wavelength of proton, which is equal to wavelength of neutron, and wavelength of proton and neutron is greater than the wavelength of electron, is the correct option. So first let's recall how we express the kinetic energy of a particle. The formula is K equal to half mv square, where K is the kinetic energy in joules, m is the mass in kilograms, and v is the velocity in meter per second. Rearranging, we get mv equal to square root of 2mk. This relationship will help us connect energy to the momentum, which is a key for de Broglie wavelength. Okay, so according to de Broglie wavelength, remember the formula for de Broglie wavelength. The de Broglie wavelength lambda is given by lambda equal to h upon mv, where h is Planck's constant, m is mass, and v is velocity. So put the value of mv as root 2mk. So de Broglie wavelength lambda equal to h upon mv. Okay, so let's connect energy and wavelength directly. Since we already related mv to the energy, we can substitute and get a new formula, lambda equal to h divided by square root of 2mk. Okay, so if all particles have the same energy k, the only variable affecting the wavelength is the mass. Okay, the heavier the particle, the smaller the wavelength. Okay, h is constant, Planck's constant already. 2 is constant, and energy is same for all the particles. So it is also constant for all the particles. So lambda is depending only on the mass. Lambda is inversely proportional to the square root of mass of the particle. So we got the relationship between lambda and mass. So to start solving, let's recall the relationship between the de Broglie wavelength lambda and kinetic energy k of a particle. This formula helps us see how the wavelength depends on the particle's properties. So the formula is lambda equals to h divided by square root of 2 times mk. Here h is Planck's constant, m is mass of the particle in kilograms, and k is the kinetic energy in joules. Since all the particles have the same energy k, the part h divided by square root of 2k is a constant for all of them. That means the only thing that changes the wavelength is the mass of each particle. So we can say that lambda is proportional to 1 divided by square root of mass. In other words, the lighter the particle, longer its wavelength. Now let's recall the relationship between the de Broglie wavelength and mass when energy is constant. The formula is wavelength is proportional to 1 divided by square root of mass. Okay, so notice the mass of proton and neutron are almost equal. So their de Broglie wavelength will also be equal. This is because when you substitute their masses into the formula, you will get the same value for lambda. Okay, let's compare the alpha particle to the proton. The alpha particle has a much greater mass than the proton. According to our formula, a larger mass means smaller wavelength. So de Broglie wavelength of alpha particle is less than the de Broglie wavelength of proton. Okay, so let's look at the electron. The electron has a much smaller mass than the neutron or proton. So since a smaller mass leads to a larger wavelength, the electron's de Broglie wavelength will be greater than that of neutron and proton. Okay, so summarize the order of the de Broglie wavelength from the smallest to the largest is alpha particle less than proton equals to neutron less than electron. Okay, so lambda alpha is less than the lambda proton equals to lambda neutron, which is less than the lambda electron. Now let's examine NCERT exemplar 11.6. The question says an electron is moving with an initial velocity v equal to v naught I. Okay, so electron is moving along the x-axis, positive x-axis, and is in a magnetic field, that is magnetic field is along y-axis, which is b equal to b naught j cap. Then its de Broglie wavelength. Options are remains constant, b remains increase with time, c decrease with time, or increases and decreases periodically. So what is de Broglie wavelength? Lambda is equal to h upon mv. So h and m is constant for electron. So we will decide. So its speed is velocity is increasing or decreasing. It will decide that de Broglie wavelength will increase, decrease, or remain constant. So option A is correct, which is remains constant. So first let's look at what is given in the problem. So the electron has an initial velocity v equal to v naught in the I direction. That is in the x-axis, along x-axis. Okay, and magnetic field B equal to B naught times J cap. Here V naught and B naught are the magnitudes of velocity and magnetic field respectively, and I cap and J cap are the unit vectors along x and y axis. Okay, so let's recall the formula for the force on a charged particle in a magnetic field, that is F equal to minus E. So Q V cross P. So Q here is electron, so minus E. Okay, so V cross B. Here E is the elementary charge, that is charge on the electron. Minus sign is for the polarity of charge. Okay, and E is equal to 1.6 into 10 raised to power minus 19 coulombs, and the negative sign is because the electron has a negative charge. The cross product means the force will be perpendicular to both velocity and the magnetic field. Okay, so F equal to minus E V naught I cap. So V is V naught I cap and B is V naught J cap. So V naught I cap minus cross B naught J cap. Okay, so we will take now cross product. So what is cross product of I cross J according to cyclic properties? So the force on charged particle in a magnetic field is given by F equal to minus E V naught B naught K cap. Okay, so V naught I cap cross B naught J cap. So V naught and B naught are constant. They will come out of cross product, and I cross J is K cap. Okay. So where E is charge of electron, V is its velocity, B is magnetic field. Here V is along I cap, B is along J cap. So their cross product is along the K direction. Okay, or the Z axis. Okay, the negative sign shows that direction is opposite for an electron. If the particle would be proton, then the force will be acting along positive Z direction. But here the charged particle is electron, so force will be in the opposite direction as compared to the case of proton. So force will be acting along the negative Z direction. Okay, so this force is always perpendicular to both velocity and magnetic field. As the force is perpendicular to electron's velocity and the magnetic field, okay, so force doesn't act along the direction of motion. It doesn't speed up or slow down the electron. So force is perpendicular to velocity, so it is not changing the velocity of the particle. It doesn't speed up or slow down the electron. It only changes the direction of the velocity. Okay, since magnitude of velocity is not changing, okay, so speed of the electron doesn't change. The magnitude of its momentum, that is mv, mass is constant, or magnitude of velocity is also not changing. So magnitude of its momentum, which is mass times velocity, also stays constant. only the direction of momentum changes, not its magnitude. Okay, so because the momentum's magnitude is constant, the de Broglie wavelength, which is given by lambda equal to h upon mv, also remains constant. Okay. Now next question, let's examine NCERT example 11.7. The question says an electron mass m with an initial velocity v equal to v naught I cap, where v naught is greater than 0, okay, positive velocity, and it is along x-axis, is in an electric field. Electric field is E equal to minus E naught I cap. So electric field is along minus x-axis, negative x-axis. E naught is constant and also greater than 0. Okay, its de Broglie wavelength at time t is given by. So options are lambda naught. What is lambda naught? It is the initial de Broglie wavelength at time t equal to 0. Okay, that is h equal to h upon m v naught. Okay, we have to find the de Broglie wavelength at time t. So A is equal to lambda naught upon 1 plus E capital E naught T upon mv naught. B option is lambda naught multiplied by 1 plus E capital E naught T upon mv naught. C option is lambda naught and D option is lambda naught T. So let's see the option. So A option is correct option, that is lambda naught upon 1 plus E capital E naught T by mv naught. Okay, so first let's recall the formula for the de Broglie wavelength, lambda equal to h upon mv. Here lambda is the wavelength in meters, h is Planck's constant, and m is the mass of the electron in this case. So let's focus on the initial condition. The initial de Broglie wavelength, which we call lambda naught, is simply h divided by m times v naught, where v naught is the electron's initial speed. Okay, so lambda naught equal to h upon mv naught, where v naught is the magnitude of initial velocity. So first let's identify the force acting on the electron due to electric field. The force on charged particle in an electric field is given by F equal to QE. Okay, for electron it is F equal to minus E capital E. Okay, so for electron, F is equal to Q, in the place of Q it is minus E and capital E. Okay, in the vector form. And minus E, what is capital E given? Capital E is equal to minus E naught I cap. So we will put this. So substitute the value. Okay, so it will become F equal to E capital E naught I cap. Okay, let's find the acceleration of the electron. So acceleration is simply force divided by the mass, or we can say F upon m. So acceleration, substituting the value acceleration is F upon m, which is E capital E naught divided by m I cap. And acceleration is also in the direction of force, that is I cap. Okay, so let's determine the electron's velocity after some time t. So we know the initial velocity, so we'll find the velocity of electron at time t. Okay, so here we will use the first equation of motion, v equal to u plus at. So which is u is initial velocity, which is v naught I cap. A acceleration is E capital E naught I cap upon m. And v is the final velocity. So expression for electron's velocity at time t, v equal to v naught I cap plus E capital E naught upon m I cap t. Okay, which is equal to v naught plus E capital E naught upon m t, which is, and direction is taken common I cap. Okay, so E naught is the electric field strength, m is the electron's mass, and t is the time. V naught is the initial velocity. So de Broglie wavelength associated with the electron at time t is given by lambda equal to h upon mv. Okay, so we'll put the value of v here. Okay, so now let's recall the formula for de Broglie wavelength, lambda equal to h upon mv, where h is Planck's constant, m is mass of the electron, and v is its velocity. Here the electron is in an electric field. Its velocity changes with time. The new velocity at time t equal to v naught plus e capital E naught upon mt. This is the magnitude of final velocity. Okay. So for putting the value of final velocity, we are not taking direction, only magnitude. Okay, because lambda wavelength is not having direction. That's why we are taking magnitude of final velocity. So substituting the time dependent velocity into our de Broglie formula, we get lambda equal to h upon mv naught multiplied by 1 plus e capital E naught t upon mv naught. Okay, so how mv naught is coming here? So we have taken mv naught common from both the terms. Okay, so we have divided v naught here. Okay, we have put the v naught plus e capital E naught upon mt in the place of v. Then we have taken mv naught common. Okay, now h upon mv naught. We know what is this? Lambda naught, which is the initial de Broglie wavelength of electron. Okay, so we can write this in the terms of initial wavelength lambda naught, which is lambda naught equal to h upon mv naught. So lambda will become lambda naught upon 1 plus e capital E naught upon mv naught multiplied by t. Okay. Now let's examine NCERT exemplar 11.8. The question says an electron mass m with an initial velocity v equal to v naught I cap, which is along x direction, is in an electric field E equal to E naught J cap. Now electric field is in along y direction. If lambda naught is equal to h upon mv naught, its de Broglie wavelength at time t is given by. Options are A option lambda naught, B option lambda naught multiplied by root 1 plus e square E naught square t square upon m square v naught square. C option is lambda naught upon root 1 plus e square E naught square t square upon m square v naught square. D option is lambda naught upon 1 plus e square E naught square t square upon m square v naught square. So correct option is C. Lambda naught upon 1 plus e square E naught square t square upon m square v naught square. Okay. So what is given in the question? Lambda naught equal to h upon m v naught. Here h is the Planck's constant, m is the mass of electron, and v naught is its initial velocity of electron. Okay, so let's consider the force acting on the electron in an electric field. The force on a charge q is given by F equal to QE. Okay, for an electron it is Q is minus E, so F equal to minus E capital E. Okay, so capital E is given in the question, which is equal to E naught J cap. So force will become F equal to minus E naught J cap. Okay, so electron's velocity will change in the y direction because of this force, while its initial velocity is in the x direction remains unchanged. Okay, so acceleration. Let's talk about the acceleration of the electron. Remember, when a charged particle like an electron is placed in an electric field, it experiences a force. This force causes it to accelerate. Okay, so the acceleration A is given by F upon m, and F we have calculated. So F is the force and m is the mass of electron. The force on the electron in an electric field we have calculated is F equal to minus E naught J cap, and we are dividing it with m to find the acceleration, where E is the charge on electron, E naught is the strength of electric field. So the acceleration becomes A equal to minus E naught J cap upon M. Here E is measured in coulombs and E naught in Newton per coulomb. Okay, so this acceleration is acting along the negative y-axis. This is because the electron has a negative charge. So the force and therefore the acceleration will be in the direction opposite to the electric field. Okay, electric field is in the y direction and force is acting along the negative y direction. Got it? Now you can see initial velocity of electron is along x-axis and velocity along y-axis is 0. Now because acceleration is along y direction, along y-axis, so velocity along y-axis will be there now. Okay, from 0 to any value, velocity in the vertical direction will increase and final velocity will also be affected, or we can say equivalent velocity. Okay, so initial velocity of the electron along x-axis is v equal to v naught I cap. Initial velocity of electron along y-axis is given by 0. Okay, this means that at start electron is not moving up or down, only sideways along the x-axis. As time passes, the electric field will cause it to gain velocity in the y direction. Okay, so velocity in the y direction will be gained also because acceleration is in the y direction. Okay, so velocity will increase from 0 to any positive or negative value. Okay, so first let's examine the electron's velocity along the x-axis after time t. Since the electric field is only along the y-axis and acceleration is acting along y-axis, it doesn't affect the x component of the velocity. So velocity along x remains v naught I cap. Okay, after time t also. This means electron keeps moving at its original speed in the x direction. Now let's focus on the y direction. The electric field exerts a force on the electron, causing it to accelerate along the y direction. The force is F equal to minus E capital E naught. Okay, where E is the electron's charge and E naught is the field strength. Okay, so velocity along y-axis after time t is given by Vy equal to, so V equal to U plus AT. Okay, so U initial velocity along y-axis is 0. So 0 plus AT. A is minus E naught upon M J cap. This is A. So minus plus minus minus E naught upon M J cap T. So this is Vy is the final velocity along y-axis, which is equal to minus E naught T upon M J cap along y-axis. And negative sign represents that direction is opposite to the field. So velocity is along negative y direction because acceleration is also in the negative y direction. So let's find the magnitude of electron's velocity after time t. Velocity will have both x and y component as time passes. Okay, so after time t, we will find the resultant velocity from its components, x component, y component. So x component after time t will remain as it is v naught, and y component after time t becomes minus E capital E naught upon mt. So squaring both these components and taking root, we will get the resultant velocity magnitude. So the magnitude of velocity of electron after time t is given by v equals to square root of vx square plus vy square. Okay, so putting the value of vx and vy gives v equals to square to the square root of v naught square plus minus E naught upon mt square. Okay, so let's simplify the expression further. We factor out v naught. Okay, so we have factored out v naught from both the terms, and final expression is v naught root 1 plus E square capital E naught square T square upon M square V naught square. So now let's recall the formula for de Broglie wavelength after time t. Lambda prime is equal to h upon mv. Okay, or we can write it as lambda equal to h upon mv. Okay, so h is Planck's constant, m is mass of electron, v is the velocity of electron at time t. Now let's substitute the value of v here. Okay, so lambda dash will be equal to h upon mv naught root 1 plus e square e naught square t square upon m square v naught square. Okay, so after simplifying it further, so h upon mv naught will become lambda naught. Okay, that is the initial de Broglie wavelength of electron. So lambda prime will be equal to lambda naught upon root 1 plus e square capital E naught square t square upon m square v naught square. Now let's examine NCERT example 11.9. The question says relativistic correction become necessary when the expression for kinetic energy half mv square becomes comparable with mc square. Okay, where m is the mass of particle. At what de Broglie wavelength will relativistic correction become important for an electron? Okay, and options are lambda equal to 10 nanometer, lambda equal to 10 to the power minus 1 nanometer, lambda equal to 10 to the power minus 4 nanometer, lambda equal to 10 to the power minus 6 nanometers. So C and D options are correct. So let's see. Let's think about what it means for relativistic correction to be important. This happens when the electron speed get closer to the speed of light c. In other terms, when the kinetic energy is not much less than the rest energy. Okay, so let's recall the formula for de Broglie wavelength. The de Broglie wavelength lambda is given by lambda equal to h upon mv. Okay, so from here v equal to, after rearranging it, v equal to h upon m lambda. So let's recall the formula for the de Broglie wavelength lambda equal to h upon mv, and rearranging it for v equal to h upon m lambda. Okay, so for electron mass, okay, for our calculation we need the mass of electron. The mass of electron is 9 into 10 to the power minus 31 kg. Now consider each option one by one. So let's start with option A. Lambda 1 is equal to 10 nanometers, converting to meters. Okay, that's 10 into 10 to the power minus 9 meter. Okay, which is equal to 10 to the power minus 8 meters. So let's substitute the values into our velocity formula. So v1 equal to 6.6 into 10 to the power minus 34 upon 9 into 10 to the power minus 31 multiplied by 10 to the power minus 8. So v1 is equal to 2.2 upon 3 into 10 to the power 5, which is nearly equal to 10 to the power 5 meter per second. So let's focus on option B. So lambda 2 is equal to 10 to the power minus 1 nanometer, which is equal to 10 to the power minus multiplied by 10 to the power minus 9 meter, which is equal to 10 to the power minus 10 meter. Okay, so V is equal to h upon m lambda. So substituting the values in the velocity formula, so V2 equal to 6.6 into 10 to the power minus 34, which is the value of Planck's constant, upon 9 into 10 to the power minus 31, which is the value of mass of electron, multiplied by 10 to the power minus 10 in this case for lambda, which is equivalent to 10 to the power 7 meter per second. Now let's focus on part C. Here we are given de Broglie wavelength lambda 3 equals 10 to the power minus 4 nanometer, which is equal to 10 to the power minus 4 multiplied by 10 to the power minus 9 meter, which is equal to 10 to the power minus 13 meter. So V equal to h upon m lambda. Substituting the values, V3 will become 6.6 multiplied by 10 is per minus 34 upon 10 into 10, 9 into 10 is per minus 31 multiplied by 10 is per minus 13, which is equivalent to 10 is per 10 meter per second. So D option, lambda 4 is equal to 10 is per minus 6 nanometer, which is equal to 10 is per minus 6 into 10 is per minus 9 meter, which is equal to 10 is per minus 15 meter. Again, from de Broglie relation, V equal to H upon M lambda. So substituting the values, V4 is equal to 6.6 into 10 is per minus 34 upon 9 into 10 is per minus 31 multiplied by 10 is per minus 15, which is equivalent to 10 is per 12 meter per second. So does option C and D are correct, as V3 and V4 is greater than 3 into 10 is per 8 meter per second. So two particles A1 and A2 of masses M1, M2, for which M1 is greater than M2 have the same de Broglie wavelength, then so A and C option are correct. So for two particles, let's clarify what it means for two particles to have the same de Broglie wavelength. The de Broglie wavelength, usually written as lambda, is a property that shows the wave-like nature of particles. Here both A1 and A2 have lambda 1 equals to lambda 2, which we will just call lambda. The formula for de Broglie wavelength is lambda equal to h upon mv, where mv is equal to p. Okay, so lambda is equal to h upon p implies p is equal to h upon lambda. Okay, this tells us if both particles have the same wavelength, they must have the same momentum, since h is a constant and lambda is same for both. Okay, so both particles A1 and A2, in the question it is given they have same de Broglie wavelength, means they have same momentum. Okay, so here h is constant, which is 6.626 multiplied by 10 is per minus 34 joule second. This means that for a fixed wavelength, the momentum p must also be fixed, no matter what mass is. Okay, so let's recall the de Broglie relation, p equal to h upon lambda. So momentum p is proportional to 1 divided by lambda. Okay, so this means if particles have same wavelengths, their momenta will be inversely related to those wavelengths. But in our case, both particles have same wavelengths. Okay, so lambda 1 equals to lambda 2. This means the ratio of their momenta p1 over p2 is just lambda 2 over lambda 1, which is 1. That means their momentum is also equal. Since lambda 1 equals lambda 2, we get p1 equals to p2. This tells us that both particles, even though they have different masses, must have the same momentum if their de Broglie wavelengths are equal. This is a direct result of the de Broglie equation. Therefore, the key takeaway is that the two particles have the same momentum. Okay, let's recall the formula for kinetic energy of a particle. The energy E of a particle with mass m and velocity v is given by E equal to half mv square. Okay, so let's manipulate this formula a bit. We can write half mv square as half mv square multiplied by m divided by m. Okay, so this step helps us set up the equation to introduce momentum, which we will use since de Broglie wavelength is related to momentum. Okay, so we see E equal to half m square v square upon m. So m square v square, it is mv whole square. mv is momentum. So it will become p square upon m, half p square upon m. Energy is related, we have related energy to the momentum. Since momentum of both the particle is same. Okay, so energy is only dependent on the mass. but mass of both the particle is not same. So energy will be different for both the particles. Okay, so at this point, it's important to note that momentum P is constant for both particles because they have the same de Broglie wavelength. Since de Broglie wavelength lambda is given by h upon p, if lambda is the same, p must also be same for both the particles regardless of their masses. Okay, so let's see how energy relates to mass when the de Broglie wavelength is the same. The formula here tells us that energy is inversely proportional to the mass. So E is proportional to 1 divided by m. This means that as the mass increases, the energy decreases, assuming the wavelengths stay constant. Okay, so let's comparing the energies of two particles directly. The ratio E1 divided by E2 equals to M2 divided by M1. Since M1 is greater than M2, the ratio is less than 1. In other words, the energy of particle A1 is less than the energy of particle A2. Okay, so E1 is less than E2. This is direct result of the inverse relation we have just discussed. So E1 is less than E2. This means particle A1, which is heavier, has less energy than particle A2, even though they have the same de Broglie wavelength. Okay, to summarize, the energy of two particles are not the same. The energy of A1, the heavier particle, is less than that of A2. Okay, so this is all about today's lecture of NCERT Exampler of chapter Dual Nature of Radiation and Matter. I hope you enjoyed the session. Thank you.